One of the pieces of information that gets scrutinized the most, and I get people writing to me every single day, is this idea of the CPI calculation itself. And obviously, we mentioned that shelter makes up, I think it's somewhere around 33% or so of it. When you look at shelter, across the pandemic, both in kind of the upswing and now in the downswing, the numbers that were being reported by the BLS were much lower than apartment.com or Zillow or name your kind of private company. And I think why a lot of people had questions about this was the BLS, from a methodology standpoint, in some cases, they're like literally calling and saying like, hey, what was your rent last year? What is it this year? Right. And kind of doing much more archaic type, data collection and synthesization. Zillow or a LoopNet or an apartment.com or one of these websites, they have, in some cases, tens of millions of data points around the country, and they're watching on a day-to-day basis both price changes in terms of the ask, but also where those are clearing. And so when you evaluate the housing market, how much weight do you put on the BLS and kind of the official shelter mechanism or a measurement versus some of these websites that may be reporting what appear to be much higher numbers, both in the good times and bad times?
Yeah, I think there are serious flaws with how the Fed does its reporting on housing inflation. And I think they've realized that, and they're going to have to get better at reading the data. How housing CPI is done is it's rent, and then it's rental equivalents, which is like owner's equivalent rent of their residence, which is like calling people and asking, how much do you think you could rent your home for, which is kind of crazy, in my opinion. But look back at when the last stimulus package was passed. What was it? 2.2 trillion. At the time, housing CPI was 2%. Home prices that month were up on a year over year basis, like 16%, 15, 16%. And there's a huge lag into the CPI, and housing is just a huge leading sector. I think just the way that we track inflation, the way the media talks about it, is definitely flawed. I would hope the way that the central bank does it, I hope they understand how it actually works and are looking at the leading indicators. But the story of inflation was occurring long before it was in the headlines.